The sun hung low and hard over King's Landing, a white coin hammered into a sky as pale as old bone. Heat shimmered over the packed sand of the yard below the red keep, blurring the edges of the figures gathered there, drowning them in sweat and dust and the quiet, ravenous anticipation of death. Tyrion Lannister could taste that anticipation, bitter as old wine left too long in the cask. The weight of his chains had become familiar over the last few days, but now they felt heavier, like another set of eyes watching from the crowd. He shifted his wrists, metal clinking softly, and tried to fix his attention on the two men in the ring. Oberyn Martell was a streak of sun and shadow, a lean line of motion in burnished leather and polished steel. His long spear flashed as he moved, the blade catching the sunlight and throwing it back into the faces of those who watched. Gregor Clegane lumbered opposite him, a mountain of plate in dull gray and black. The crimson of House Lannister splashed across his chest like a bloodstain. His massive greatsword rose and fell, carving heavy arcs through the air that seemed to drag the very day down with them. "Remember why you are here," Tyrion murmured under his breath, though whether he spoke to Oberyn or to himself, he wasn't sure. It was supposed to be simple, trial by combat, one man's life for another's fate. Yet nothing in his life had ever been simple, and the gods had never been kinder than necessary. He heard Cersei's quiet breathing beside their father's elevated seat, saw the tight line of her mouth and the hunger in her eyes. She wanted this. She wanted him dead so badly she could hardly keep from licking her lips. The spear darted forward again, Oberyn's feet gliding, barely disturbing the sand. Metal scraped. A cut appeared on Gregor's thigh, just above the greave, dark blood beating through broken mail. The mountain roared, a sound that rolled over the yard like the breaking of stone, and the crowd hissed, drew in breath, leaned forward. Tyrion felt his heart lurch. That was one cut. One. It was not enough. Oberyn, he thought, fingers curling tight around the wooden railing. Don't play with him. Finish it. Oberyn's teeth flashed in a smile that had nothing of humor in it. Sweat slicked his brow, glistening beneath the dark fall of his hair. The sound of thousands watching became a distant roar in his ears, like the old tales of the sea he'd heard on long journeys. Above it all, like a single clear note on a harp string, he could still hear her name. Ellaria. He let the memory of his sister's face sharpen him. Not soften, never that. Grief could be heavy, could drag a man down into softness. Rage was clean. Rage was a knife honed on the stone of years. He had been waiting for this, through battles and beds, through all the dripping wine and whispered plots, through the long, slow patience of his brother in Sunspear. He had waited for this. Gregor swung again. The blade tore through the air, cutting where Oberyn's head had just been. Oberyn had already ducked, already spun to the side, spear haft flexing against his calloused palms as he pivoted, used the momentum, drove the butt of the weapon hard into the back of the mountain's knee. The joint buckled, armor clanking as Gregor staggered. The crowd gasped. A ripple passed through them like wind through tall grass. Tyrion's breath hitched. Beside Tywin, Lord Mace Tyrell shifted his bulk, beads on his doublet tinkling softly. Ser Loras Tyrell's eyes narrowed, following every movement with the hungry focus of a man who understood the language of steel. "Stand, my lord," Tywin said, his voice a level cut of ice. "You disgrace yourself." Mace sank back into his chair, flushing, but his gaze did not leave the fight. "Ellaria Martell," Oberyn's voice rang out across the yard, cutting through the roar. "You raped her. You murdered her. You killed her children." He punctuated each accusation with a jab, a cut, another bright splash of blood on gray steel. Gregor tried to rise fully, but his leg betrayed him. The knee refused to straighten under the sudden wrongness inside. Oberyn had felt the give of the tendons, the tiny yielding that told a seasoned fighter where to strike next. Above, Cersei stiffened. She shot a glance at Tywin, but their father's face did not change. He might have been carved from the same pale stone as the Red Keep's walls, only his eyes alive, cold green chips set deep as if to watch the world burn without ever feeling the heat. "Stop taunting him and finish this," Tyrion whispered, a sheen of desperation creeping into his voice. "Please, you magnificent, stubborn fool. You've won. Just admit it." The mountain knelt, and there was something obscene about it. That much bulk brought low. His breath rasped through his visor, a grinding, ruined sound, but the power was still there, coiled, waiting. A maimed lion could still bite. A wounded boar could still gore. Oberyn knew this in the marrow of his bones. He had spent his life dancing around stronger foes who thought strength alone would save them. Yet when he came to a stop before Gregor, spear held lightly in both hands, he did not drive it home. Not yet. "Look at me," Oberyn said, his voice softer now, intimate. The words were for Gregor, but he wanted the whole yard to hear. "Look at me and tell them what you did. Tell them who gave you the order." Gregor's helmet shifted. Oberyn could feel the man's eyes on him, hot and hateful behind the slit. Blood seeped from beneath the edge of the plate at his thigh, pattering onto the sand. He stank, iron, sweat, rot. Even through the heat-warped air, the smell crawled over Oberyn's skin like ants. "You raped her," Oberyn went on, step by measured step, circling closer. "You murdered her. You killed her children. Say it. Say her name. Say it for all of them to hear." The crowd murmured, restless. Some of the Dornishmen who had come north with him stood near the rear, their expressions tight, hands on hilts. To them, this was not spectacle. This was sacrament. A reckoning 30 years overdue. Up on the platform, Grand Maester Pycelle shifted and wheezed, his fingers twisting in his beard. Prince Oberyn's charges, though no surprise in essence, had never been flung quite so nakedly into the air of the capital. These were the sorts of truths the realm preferred whispered behind heavy doors, not shouted under the open sky. "Enough," Tywin said quietly, though no command left his lips officially. The word was to no one and to everyone. Tyrion heard it. He felt it, a warning bell tolling inside his skull. His father needed this to end cleanly. Their family name was already flayed open by this farce of a trial. Every passing moment bled more power from House Lannister into the dust. Oberyn's eyes flicked upward, just for a heartbeat, to the platform where Tywin sat. He saw the hand of the king framed against the stone, impassive. He saw Cersei leaning forward like a hawk, and Jaime behind them, jaw clenched, fingers resting on the pommel of his sword as if he might yet be called upon to enforce his father's will. Then Oberyn's gaze dropped back to the mountain. He smiled again, but this time there was something almost gentle in it. "No," he said, so softly that only those nearest might have heard. "Not enough. Not yet." He stepped in, one lithe stride, and his foot was on Gregor's chest, just above the plate's center, where it curved outward. He felt the dull thump of the man's heart through the steel. Gregor grunted, tried to haul himself upright, but the damage to his leg turned that effort into a clumsy lurch. Oberyn shifted his weight, keeping him down. "Stay," he murmured. "Good." The point of his spear traced a slow circle in the air between them. Through the lip of the visor, Oberyn glimpsed the slick gleam of an eye, white around the edges with pain and fear. "You know me," Oberyn said. "You have tried to forget, I think. One Dornish whore's brother. Who cares? But I have not forgotten you, Gregor Clegane." Gregor snarled, a guttural sound, and his arm jerked. The sword was still in his hand, impossibly. Oberyn saw the movement, felt more than heard the hiss of steel. His body reacted before thought. His weight rolled off Gregor's chest and to the side, spear haft whipping up in a blur to catch the rising slash. Would met metal jarring his bones. The blade skated off, missing his midsection by a whisper. For an instant, the yard exploded into sound. Screams, shouts, curses. Soldiers gripped spears tighter. The Kingsguard shifted, white cloaks stirring. Iron scraped on stone as men near the front reflexively reached for swords they'd been ordered not to draw. Tyrion's stomach dropped. He had seen enough battles, enough tourneys, enough barroom brawls to know how fast a sure thing could sour into catastrophe. All it took was one slip, one careless heartbeat. "Oberyn!" He whispered again, the word raw as if dragged over glass. "End it!" Oberyn sprang back, his sandals sending up tiny fountains of sand. His lungs burned. His body sang with the thrill, the danger, the knife edge of it. For a heartbeat, arrogance nearly won. Every part of him wanted to laugh, to taunt this hulking butcher for nearly catching him at the last. To make the world watch as he danced another circle, carved another line of red, until nothing remained but a ruin on the ground that used to be a monster. But Elia's face rose again behind his eyes. Not the pale, bloodless mask they had shown him after, but the laughing girl who'd walked the water gardens, who had carried her children in her arms and trusted that the men sworn to protect her would do so. He exhaled slowly. He did not laugh. "Gregor Clegane," Oberyn said, steadying his breath, his grip, his raging heart. "You will not say her name. You will not confess. So I will speak for you." The world contracted to the gleam of steel and the black rectangle of Gregor's visor. Oberyn moved. There was no flourish this time, no spinning of the shaft to dazzle or feint. His hands shot forward in a straight, brutal line, spear point aimed at the single point where flesh lay naked behind too-thick metal. Gregor tried to jerk aside, but the ruined leg betrayed him again. The helm turned just enough to present the visor's slit. The spear kissed it and slid in. There was a crunch, a sickening resistance as if he were pushing through rotted wood instead of bone. Then the point broke through into the hot, wet softness beyond. Oberyn drove it to the fletching, his shoulders straining, teeth bared with effort. The force of the thrust lifted Gregor half off his knees. The massive man convulsed like a puppet yanked on the wrong strings. A sound tore from Gregor's throat that barely qualified as human. Then even that was cut off. Blood spurted from the slit, dark and thick, running down over the helm's face, dripping onto the sand. Oberyn felt the vibration through the shaft as the mountain skull shattered inward, his mind reduced to pulp around foreign steel. The crowd erupted. There were screams, cheers, cries to the gods. Somewhere a woman retched. Others hooped like children at a mummer's show gone mad. The Red Keep's stones themselves seemed to hold their breath. Oberyn kept his hands on the spear until he felt the resistance change. The difference between a living man's thrashing and the heavy collapse of meat that has given up its claim to life. Only then did he wrench the weapon free and step back, breathing hard. Gregor Clegane toppled onto his side. A tremor ran through that great body, then another, and then he lay still. His sword fell from his hand, the blade carving a final, shallow furrow in the sand. "It is done," Oberyn thought, an odd quiet ringing in his skull. No joy, no triumph, just a hollow, echoing relief. It is done. For several heartbeats, no one moved. The only sound was the drip of blood from Oberyn's spear and the faint jangle of Gregor's armor settling into stillness. A fly, bold and stupid, circled above the helmet before landing in the dark red that seeped from the visor. Tyrion realized he'd stopped breathing. His chest burned. He dragged in air that tasted of iron and dust and the faint, sour stench of fear radiating from the crowd. He was alive. The thought came to him not as a shout but as a whisper, trembling and disbelieving. He was alive. Gregor Clegane was dead, and by the laws of gods and men, the verdict was clear. He looked up slowly to where his father sat. Tywin's expression had not changed, but Tyrion knew that face too well. The stillness was not peace. It was restraint, rage compressed into a diamond-hard point. Cersei, by contrast, could not hide her fury. Her lips were parted, breath coming fast. Color had risen in her cheeks, and her eyes were wide, bright with hatred. Across the yard, Meryn Trant and Boros Blunt exchanged a look, as if unsure whether they should leap down and protect the body of the king's champion or stand their ground and pretend this was all proceeding according to plan. Ser Jaime Lannister's jaw worked once, twice. His eyes flicked from the corpse of the mountain to his younger brother. They met Tyrion's gaze and held it. Something passed between them then, wordless, a recognition carved in the years they had shared as boys, as men, as strangers inside the same family. Tyrion saw the guilt there, the doubt, the hairline fractures in Jaime's loyalty that had widened with every cruelty they'd watched their sister and father commit. Jaime inclined his head, just a fraction. A soldier's acknowledgement, a brother's apology he could not yet speak aloud. "Ser Meryn," Tywin said, his voice carrying easily over the stunned yard. "Confirm that the king's champion is dead." The king's guard obeyed, legs moving stiffly, cloak whispering along the sand. He knelt beside Gregor's body, put a hand on the helm as if feeling for life through steel. After a moment that seemed to stretch like melted cheese, he rose. "He is dead, my lord," Meryn rasped. "And the prince?" Tywin's eyes slid to Oberyn. Oberyn straightened slowly, spear held loosely, like a man resting after a long dance rather than a warrior standing over a fallen foe. Blood streaked his weapon, his breeches, a splash across his forearm where the initial spray had caught him. "The prince is uninjured," he replied calmly, "and unsatisfied." Tyrion's heart clenched at that choice of word. "Gods, Oberyn," he thought, "don't." Oberyn walked toward the platform with the measured confidence of a man whose time had finally caught up with him. Each step stirred the sand, leaving a trail between the corpse and the seat of power that had shielded men like Gregor Clegane for decades. He stopped at the invisible boundary, close enough that archers on the walls tensed, hands flexing on bowstrings, but not so close that any could accuse him of threatening the hand of the king. The spear remained angled downward, its tip just above the ground. All the threat was in his voice, in his eyes. "My lord hand," Oberyn called. "By the laws of this realm, the gods have spoken. Your monster is dead. Your accusation against Tyrion Lannister dies with him." The yard rustled, hundreds of people shifting, glancing from Oberyn to Tywin to Tyrion and back again. Some tried to school their features into polite blankness. Others let their curiosity show. The story would spread before the sun set, galloping through the city and out along the roads like a runaway horse. Tywin rose. He did it slowly, unhurried, as if he were standing to greet a guest at dinner rather than to acknowledge the public butchering of his chosen champion. The wind caught the edge of his crimson cloak, tugging it gently. He laid one gloved hand on the railing, his rings glinting. "Prince Oberyn," he said, "the verdict is clear. Tyrion Lannister is acquitted of the murder of King Joffrey Baratheon." The words were rocks dropped into still water. Tyrion flinched as they hit him, not from pain, but from the sheer, impossible weight of them. Acquitted. It had seemed more likely he'd grow wings and fly from his cell than hear those words from his father's mouth. But, Tywin went on. Of course there would be a but. This was Tywin Lannister. The sentence might be forced, but the shape of it was his to carve. His innocence of this one crime does not erase a lifetime of transgressions. He remains a member of my house and subject to my authority. The court may release him from these charges, but House Lannister will decide what is to be done with its own. There was a murmur quickly smothered. Lords shifted in their seats. The line between crown and house blurred so often in this city that most no longer bothered to distinguish them, but some still understood the difference. Tyrion's lips twisted. Even acquittal in his father's hands became another leash. Oberyn tilted his head, bird-like. "Is that how it works here in the north?" he asked lightly. "In Dorne, when a man is declared innocent, we do not then clap him in chains for displeasing his father." Tyrion wanted to laugh. The sound built in his chest, a hysterical flutter like trapped birds, but he swallowed it. His tongue felt thick. He flexed his hands, hearing the chains rattle, feeling the cold bite of the iron cuffs. Free and yet not, vindicated and yet still judged. "Congratulations, little brother," Cersei called down, her voice edged with venomous sweetness. "You have earned the right to be our shame a while longer." He looked up at her. It was extraordinary, he thought, that a face he had once thought beautiful, when he'd still believed beauty might hint at mercy, could twist so easily into something so ugly. "You are too kind, sweet sister," Tyrion replied, forcing his voice not to shake. I should like a new set of chains to commemorate the occasion, perhaps with rubies, and the heads of a few more innocent men you blame for your failings." Cersei stiffened. Tywin's gaze flicked to him, a warning, sharp and cold as a knife's point. "Enough," their father said. "Remove his chains." Jaime moved before anyone else could. He descended from the platform with the slow, deliberate stride of a man braced for any sudden command to do something darker. The Kingsguard armor gleamed on his body, white cloak flowing behind him, but the gold hand at the end of his right arm glinted mockingly, a reminder of past follies, of wildfires and oaths broken. He stopped beside Tyrion and nodded to the guard holding the key. The man obeyed, fumbling a little as he worked the lock. The cuffs fell away with a heavy clank, leaving raw circles on Tyrion's wrists. Jaime's eyes met his again, closer now. There were words there, unsaid and perhaps unsayable in this place, under these watching eyes. Tyrion found, absurdly, that his own throat tightened. "Well," he said softly, "it seems the gods have decided they aren't done tormenting me yet." Jaime's mouth twitched. "You're alive," he said under his breath. "Take that and run with it." "Run where?" Tyrion asked. "Into whose arms? Father's? Cersei's? The loving embrace of the small folk who now know me as the monster who killed a king and somehow wriggled free." Jaime didn't answer. He didn't have to. The answer lay between them, heavy and unspoken. Oberyn's chest rose and fell as he stood there under the weight of 1,000 stares. For a moment, it seemed he might push further, might fling another accusation, might force Tywin Lannister to answer here and now for crimes that had bloodied the very stones beneath their feet. Instead, he drew in a slow breath and lifted his face to the blazing sun. "Oberyn Martell," he cried again, but this time the words were not a weapon aimed at Gregor Clegane. They were a tribute thrown upward, a name offered to the sky itself. Justice for Ellaria of Dorne. Justice for her children. The Dornishmen at the rear took up the cry, their voices rising in a rough, fierce chorus. Justice for Ellaria. Justice for Dorne. Their banners swayed, the sun and spear sigil flashing like flame. Some of the Westerosi lords frowned, disapproving. Others looked thoughtful, as if measuring the sound, weighing its power. The city's small folk, those lucky or cunning enough to have found a vantage point atop walls and roofs, joined in more tentatively, not fully understanding but eager to be part of anything that tasted like defiance against the Golden Lions who had crushed them under taxes and levies for so long. Tywin's jaw tightened. The sound offended him on a level deeper than mere irritation. This was his city now, his capital, his kingdom in all but name. For a foreign prince to turn his moment of legally sanctioned violence into a rallying cry, it was a challenge, subtle but unmistakable. "Prince Oberyn," Tywin said, when the echoes finally began to fade. "You have had your justice. I trust that Dorne will see this as proof of the crown's good faith." Oberyn looked back at him, the faintest hint of a smile ghosting around his mouth. "Oh, my lord," he replied, "you have given me nothing today. Justice would have been done whether you willed it or no. But yes, Dorne has seen something. Whether it is good faith or fear, that remains to be decided." With that, he turned his back on the platform and walked away, spear on his shoulder, leaving the corpse of the mountain and the shivering silence of Lannister pride behind. The yard began to empty in a confused swirl of silk and steel. Lords and ladies gathered their retinues like skirts, drifting away in clusters to dissect what they had just seen. Sellswords and guards shuffled, eager to escape the oppressive gaze of the Red Keep and return to the simple comfort of wine and dice. The small folk melted back into alleys and side streets, already shaping the story into something wilder, sharper, more useful. Tyrion remained where he was, momentarily forgotten. The absence of chains felt as strange as the sudden absence of imminent death. His wrists tingled, as if he still wore the cuffs. He flexed his fingers, watching the red marks fade slowly. Footsteps crunched in the sand beside him. "You owe me a cask of very fine wine," Oberyn Martell said. Tyrion turned, blinking, The prince stood at his shoulder, spear now slung more casually, his hair damp with sweat, his face still flushed from the fight. Up close, he smelled of steel and leather and a faint, bitter tang he realized was poison, clinging to the spear point. "I owe you more than wine," Tyrion said, his voice coming out hoarser than he would have liked. "But I'm afraid House Lannister has not been prompt with its payments of late. I was under the impression we were bankrupting ourselves buying loyalty and spectacle in the north." Oberyn's mouth quirked. "Spectacle," he said, tasting the word. "Yes. I suppose that is one thing they will call it." Tyrion followed his gaze to the sprawled bulk of Gregor's body, where a handful of Lannister men struggled to lift the dead weight onto a cart. Blood smeared their hands and armor, stained the wood. One of them retched against the wall. "Thank you," Tyrion said quietly. The words felt too small. There was no way to convey, in this place, under these walls, what it meant to stand in front of the mountain and win. To spit in the face of the power that had arranged this entire farce of a trial and emerge intact. Oberyn studied him, eyes dark and unreadable for a heartbeat. "Do not thank me yet, Lannister," he replied. "The game you are in has not ended. Your father will not suffer this humiliation quietly, nor will your charming sister. Today we have cut one head from their hydra. There are many more." "Ah," Tyrion said, "and here I was hoping to spend the evening drunk and very far from politics." "You may still do that," Oberyn allowed. "But first, you should decide where you will stand when the next blow falls." Tyrion snorted. "As if I have ever been allowed to choose where I stand." "Today you were not allowed to choose whether you lived or died," Oberyn said softly. "Yet here you are, alive. Sometimes survival is the only victory the gods grant us, but it is a victory all the same. Do not waste it." Across the yard, Jaime lingered, watching them. When Tyrion's eyes met his again, he gave the barest nod, then turned and walked back toward the Red Keep, his white cloak trailing behind him like a fading banner. Tyrion felt the weight of the city settle onto his shoulders. The Tower of the Hand loomed, full of his father's schemes. The great September with the Faith's prying eyes. The twisting streets of Flea Bottom, where whispers bred like rats. Dorne, far to the south, where patient men like Oberyn Martell would be listening for word of what his brother had done here today. "I suppose," Tyrion said, "that the first choice a man makes after escaping death should be a wise one, shouldn't it?" Oberyn's smile this time was smaller, but more real. "It helps." Tyrion looked back at the platform where Tywin had stood, at the blood in the sand where the mountain had fallen, at the walls that had never protected anyone who didn't already know how to wield them. "Then perhaps," he said slowly, "it is time I stopped standing alone." He turned fully to Oberyn, the sun at his back, the taste of dust and blood thick in his mouth, and bowed his head a fraction, enough to acknowledge, not enough to submit. "Prince Oberyn," he said, "may I buy you that cask of wine? And while we drink it, perhaps you might tell me how Dorne feels about tearing lions from their pedestals." Oberyn laughed, a low, pleased sound. "Now, Lannister," he replied, "you are speaking my language." Above them, the Red Keep watched in silence as the Viper and the Imp walked away together across the blood-streaked sand, their shadows stretching long in the murderous afternoon light, toward a future neither of them yet understood, but one that, from this moment onward, would no longer belong entirely to House Lannister. The last echoes of the crowd's roar still clung to the stones of the throne room, like smoke stubbornly refusing to leave a gutted house. The great doors boomed shut, cutting off the muddled noise of King's Landing beyond, and for a moment there was only the soft scrape of boots and the dry rustle of silk as nobles made their bows and scampered away. Tywin Lannister remained where he was, just below the Iron Throne, hands clasped lightly behind his back. The swords of kings glinted above him in jagged silhouette, their edges catching the afternoon light and throwing it across his face in broken shards. He felt none of it. The armor he wore was older than steel. Pride, discipline, a lifetime's habit of command. These were the plates that had turned aside blows which would have felled other men. And yet, as the last of the highborn filed out and the space before him emptied, There was a tightness in his chest that had nothing to do with age. He had lost. Not the trial, there were always other ways to break Tyrion than a public beheading, but the moment. Oberyn Martell had not only killed Gregor Clegane. He had seized the yard, the city, and, for those few blood-slicked heartbeats, the narrative of the realm itself. Ellaria's name had rung from the walls Tywin had painted with other people's sons. The memory made his jaw clench. Cersei stood at his right, fingers digging crescent moons into her own palms. Jaime lingered at his left, eyes distant, expression unreadable. A handful of guards ringed the space, along with a scattering of lesser lords too slow or too curious to leave. "Clear the hall," Tywin said at last. The order moved outward like a ripple. Guards herded stragglers toward the doors. Pycelle shuffled off, beard trembling, with Mace Tyrell waddling beside him, whispering loudly about the valiant contest and unfortunate outcome. Varys bowed low, Spider's smile placid, before gliding away on soft feet. When at last the great chamber was nearly empty, Tywin turned and began to climb the steps toward the throne. Not to sit, he had no taste for that chair of fused threats, but to place his back to it, to remind himself and anyone watching who truly wielded the power it represented. "They're letting him walk," Cersei hissed, the words slipping out before she could swallow them. "After everything he's done, after what he did to Joffrey." Tywin's gaze flicked to her, cool and sharp. "Control yourself," he said. "The king's uncle has been acquitted. Would you prefer the realm believe your son's murderer escaped justice? Or that their hand of the king presided over a fair trial in which even his own son was judged by law?" "It was not fair," Cersei spat. "It was a farce. Vipers and dwarfs and Dornish tricks. Fairness," Tywin went on as if she hadn't spoken, "is a story, the only one that matters now. Joffrey is dead. Gregor Clegane is dead. We cannot resurrect either. What we can do is ensure that the tale told from the arbor to the wall is that House Lannister allowed the truth to be tested and did not shrink from its verdict." Cersei stared at him with something like disbelief. "You care what tales they tell?" "I care what men believe," Tywin said. "Belief moves gold, and swords, and ships. Already ravens will be flying. By nightfall half the realm will have heard that a prince of Dorne defeated our champion in single combat and shouted Oberyn Martell's name while he did it. Do you imagine they will leave out the rest? That the hand accepted the judgment? That the accused was released?" Out of the corner of her eye, Cersei watched Tyrion being guided toward a side door, not in chains now but still flanked by guards. Jaime walked a few paces behind, as if to shadow his brother even in freedom. It made her stomach churn. "He will destroy us," she whispered. "You know he will. He always finds a way." Tywin did not look. "Tyrion is no more capable of destroying this house than Joffrey was of ruling it," he said. "He is a problem. He will be dealt with." "How?" Cersei demanded. "You had your chance and you let it slip through your fingers for the sake of a story. Now Oberyn has humiliated us. Dorne is shouting for justice. And Tommen sits on that throne like a lamb fattened for slaughter. How do you propose to deal with that, father?" "With letters." "With letters," Tywin said calmly. "And with fear. Oberyn has given the city a spectacle. I will remind it who built the stage." He looked past her, to the shadowed arches where Qyburn lingered half seen, a lean form in drab cloth, watching with hungry eyes. Tywin's mouth thinned in displeasure at the man's presence, but he said nothing. Cersei's pet would be useful in his time. For now, the tools he needed were more conventional. "Summon the small council," he said. "We will meet within the hour." The small council chamber smelled of tallow and parchment and the faint copper tang that clung to all old stone. Outside, King's Landing baked beneath the hammering sun. But the room was cool, the walls thick enough to blunt the day's worst heat. Tywin sat at the head of the long table, his cup untouched, a scatter of scrolls and reports arrayed with military precision before him. To his right, Cersei had claimed a seat without invitation, her goblet of wine already half drained. Mace Tyrell occupied too much space and air nearby, fiddling with a jeweled clasp. Pycelle wheezed at the far end, his fingers stained with ink and herbs. Varys folded his soft hands, ringless, the very picture of harmlessness. Oberyn Martell lounged on a chair, as if it were a cushioned bench in some Dornish garden rather than a carved seat in the heart of his enemy's power. His hands were clean now, the spear put away, but Tyrion could still see, in memory, the arc of blood that had followed his thrust. Tyrion himself stood behind an empty chair along the side, a place with no formal name. No longer prisoner, but not exactly counselor. No longer accused, but far from absolved. Suited him. He had never been comfortable among these men when he wore the title of Master of Coin. He wore this half-ghost role more honestly. "The realm will talk," Tywin began without preamble. "We cannot silence every tongue in King's Landing, let alone the 7 kingdoms, but we can ensure that the loudest voices repeat what we wish them to." "And what would that be?" Oberyn asked lazily. "That the hand of the king was forced by law to free a son he believes guilty? Or that Dorne's champion proved what your own knights could not?" Mace cleared his throat loudly. "Surely we can all agree," he blustered, "that the gods have spoken and the matter should be put to rest. Dwelling on the unpleasant details will only give our enemies cause to." "Our enemies already have cause," Tywin said. "They will not need Oberyn's performance to justify their ambitions." Varys's eyes flicked to Tyrion, then back. "What tale would you like me to encourage, my lord?" he asked mildly. "I am merely a humble servant of the realm. Ears, as you know, are far more numerous than mouths, but they are not entirely beyond persuasion. Spread word that the crown permitted a foreign prince to champion an accused Lannister," Tywin said. "Emphasize that we allowed a Dornishman to kill one of our own bannermen in a dispute that touched our house more closely than his. Let them see generosity, fairness, strength so secure it does not fear self-scrutiny." Cersei almost choked on her wine. "Fairness?" she repeated, incredulous. "If the people believe we are fair," Tywin said, "they will accept our harshness when it comes. A ruler who is seen as cruel and unjust is hated. A ruler seen as cruel but fair is obeyed." Oberyn's lips quirked. "Then which are you, Lord Tywin?" he asked. "Cruel, fair, or merely obeyed?" For a moment the room tensed. Tyrion, watching, felt the air pull taut like the string of a bow. Tywin met the Dornish prince's gaze without blinking. "I am obeyed," he said, "and I intend to remain so." Varys inclined his bald head. "Very well, my lord. I will ensure the singers understand the correct chords to strike." His lips curved in that gentle, empty smile. "They do so love a tale of noble sacrifice and stern justice tempered by mercy." "And what will the small folk say?" Tyrion asked lightly, unable to keep silent. "When they hear that the mountain fell to a single spear and the man he was meant to kill now drinks wine in the Tower of the Hand?" Mace shifted uncomfortably. Cersei's eyes narrowed. Pycelle made a small, disapproving noise. "They will say," Varys answered before Tywin could, "that the gods favored Prince Oberyn and that the hand of the king is too honorable to ignore their decision, even when it cuts close to his own house." Tyrion snorted. "Is that what we call it? Honor?" He raised his brows at his father. "Forgive me if I fail to recognize the creature." "Tyrion," Tywin said, voice like a closing door, "your life was spared today because I permitted a trial that could have ended otherwise. Do not mistake survival for triumph. You will not sit this council. You will not speak for this house. You will do as you are told." "And what is it I am to be told?" Tyrion asked. "Where to hide? Which cell to return to? Or do you plan to ship me to the wall and be done with it?" Cersei's eyes lit at that notion. "The wall would suit him," she said. "Let him freeze among rapers and traitors. It's where he belongs." "Your brother belongs where I say," Tywin said, "and I have not yet decided where that will be." He looked at Tyrion, and in that look was a calculus as cold as any he'd ever applied to a battlefield. The dwarf was an embarrassment, a liability. Yet he was also a Lannister, and Tywin's pride balked at casting his own blood into the snow or onto the end of a rope after publicly proclaiming his innocence. There were other ways to neutralize a man. "You will remain in the Red Keep for now," Tywin said. "Under guard, but not in chains. You will make no speeches, grant no interviews, give no coin to singers. You will go nowhere without a Lannister escort. When I have decided how best to use you, you will be informed." "Use me?" Tyrion repeated softly. "Of course." Varys watched them with hooded eyes. Oberyn's gaze had sharpened, the lazy amusement thinning to something more intent. They left the council in a slow, ragged procession, each peeling away along different corridors like streams branching off from a river. Cersei swept out first, cape swirling, Qyburn sliding into step beside her with the eagerness of a carrion bird following a lioness. Mace lumbered away, muttering to himself about feasts and tournaments. Pycelle tottered, Varys ghosted. Tyrion found himself walking beside Oberyn again. The Dornish princes stride easy despite the long day. 2 Lannister guards trailed them, at a respectful distance, but never far enough to forget. "So," Oberyn said, voice echoing lightly off the stone, "your father intends to use you." "It's an old habit of his," Tyrion replied. "When I was a boy, he used me as an object lesson. Later, as a blunt instrument. In adulthood, I graduated to scapegoat. One must admire a man who finds so many varied applications for his own offspring." Oberyn laughed softly. "You joke," he said. "But you know as well as I do that Tywin Lannister is a beast who does not enjoy being wounded. Today you took a bite out of him without even raising a hand." "Did I?" Tyrion asked. "From where I sat, it was your spear in the mountain's skull." "Ah, but it was your trial," Oberyn said. "Your life. Your father's need to be seen as just. I merely provided the show. Now he is cornered. If he harms you openly." After that spectacle, after speaking the word, "acquitted," he risks looking petty, cruel. If he does nothing, he leaves a living reminder in his halls that even the great Tywin Lannister can be forced to his knees by law. Tyrion smiled without humor. "Cornered lions are at their most dangerous." "Yes," Oberyn said, "which is why one must decide whether to step closer with a knife or stand back and let them bleed slowly." They turned into a narrower passage, torches guttering in iron brackets. The air here was cooler, carrying the faint scent of old stone and something else, parchment and dust. Tyrion knew the way well. The Tower of the Hand loomed above, prickling with memories. "Dorne will be pleased with your triumph," Tyrion said, "though I imagine your brother will enjoy it more than the headaches it brings." "Doran was born for headaches," Oberyn replied. "He collects them the way other men collect whores." "And you?" Tyrion asked. "What do you collect?" "Debts," Oberyn said lightly. "You, Lannister, now owe me 2 lives. Your own and the one I took from the man who killed my sister. It would be a shame to waste the leverage that gives us." "Us?" Tyrion echoed. Oberyn glanced at him, eyes gleaming in the torchlight. "You asked earlier how Dorne feels about tearing lions from pedestals," he said. "Perhaps it is time we find out together." Cersei's chambers were thick with the scent of wine and roses, a cloying mix that clung to the back of the throat. She dismissed her handmaidens with a snap of irritation, unable to bear their curious glances, and poured herself another cup with a hand that wasn't entirely steady. Tommen sat near the window, feet not quite reaching the floor, watching her with wide, uncertain eyes. He had been brought in late to hear the official pronouncement of Tyrion's acquittal, and the confusion hadn't left his face since. "So Uncle Tyrion didn't kill Joffrey?" he asked quietly. "The gods? They chose him to live?" Cersei's fingers tightened on the cup. For a heartbeat she imagined hurling it at the wall, watching it shatter, red wine spattering the stones like blood. Instead, she forced her lips into something approximating a smile and crossed to him. "The gods test us, my sweet," she said, resting a hand on his shoulder. "Sometimes they allow terrible men to escape the punishment they deserve so that we may learn to be stronger." Do you understand? Tommen's brow furrowed. I don't know, he admitted. He always spoke kindly to me. Joffrey didn't like him, but he would bring me books. He said one day he'd show me the tunnels under the city. Books and tunnels, Cersei said coldly. That's what vipers use to charm little boys, Tommen. Do not be fooled. Tyrion is dangerous. So is that Dornish prince who killed Ser Gregor. They are enemies of our house. Dorne is our ally, Tommen said, repeating a lesson he'd been given. You said so when Prince Oberyn came. You said we needed their spears. Cersei bared her teeth in something that was not a smile. Allies can be enemies too, she said. They just pretend better. Behind her, Qyburn shifted, the slight movement drawing her attention. He stood near the table, hands folded, eyes bright with interest. You asked me to remain, he said in his mild, educated voice. I assume that was not merely to witness a lesson in royal distrust. Cersei straightened. No, she said. You saw what happened today. You saw the way that creature from Dorne dared to throw Ellaria's name in our faces. The way he made a spectacle of us. I saw a very skilled fighter kill a very large man, Qyburn said. Quite efficiently. I was disappointed to see Ser Gregor's body removed so quickly. There is much we might have learned from the effects of such poison. Ser Gregor was our hammer, Cersei said. A weapon the realm feared. Now he's carrion in some cellar and Oberyn Martell walks the Red Keep as if he owns it. She turned to the window, looking out over the blazing roofs of the city. I want them both gone, she said. Tyrion. Oberyn. I don't care how. I don't care what stories father wants to tell. I will not sleep in this castle while they breathe under the same roof as my son. Qyburn's head tilted. Accidents do happen, he murmured. Even to princes and high lords. Cersei's gaze slid back to him. Find me a way, she said. Quiet, clean, and untraceable. If my father wishes to preserve his pretty tale of fairness, let him. We will give him something else to blame when the time comes. Night fell slowly over King's Landing, like a great, suffocating cloak. In the Tower of the Hand, Tywin sat alone at his desk, the only illumination the candles guttering in brass stands and the last sliver of fading light at the window. The map of Westeros lay before him, rivers and mountains drawn in careful strokes of ink, the seas a pale wash of blue. Tiny carved lions marked his holdings. Casterly Rock, Lannisport, Harrenhal, Riverrun, taken, held, or promised. A wolf had once crouched over Winterfell. That piece now lay in a drawer, obsolete. The North was a blasted ruin in all but name. The Reach was bound to him by his granddaughter's marriage. The Stormlands fractured by war, the Riverlands cowed. Only Dorne remained as it had been. Distant, stubborn, unpredictable. A sun and spear token sat at Sunspear, untouched, as if daring him to move it. A raven shifted on the sill, claws scraping the stone. Its eyes gleamed blackly as it watched him, head cocked. There were already 3 sealed scrolls beside his hand, and another half-written before him. To Prince Doran Nimrose Martell of Sunspear, he had penned a formal acknowledgement of Oberyn's victory, a carefully worded expression of regret at Ellaria's fate, never quite an apology, never quite an admission, an offer of trade concessions, mutual assurances, shared enemies. Stannis Baratheon, the Ironborn, the encroaching chaos from beyond the sea. As he lifted the quill, his mind returned, unbidden, to Oberyn's voice ringing across the yard. You raped her. You murdered her. You killed her children. He set the quill down before ink could blot the parchment. Tywin Lannister did not regret Ellaria's death. He regretted that it had been usable against him today. The decisions he had made during Robert's rebellion had been precise, calculated. The deaths at the sack of King's Landing had served a purpose, to present a broken dynasty to a usurper hungry for legitimacy, to ensure that no child dragon would rise from the ashes and burn what he had built. Yet here, 3 decades later, those same ashes had blown north on Dornish wind, smoldering under his own roof. a lion cornered. The phrase came to him, and he almost smiled at the melodrama of it. He had been in worse positions. The Rains, the Tarbecks. The young Tywin had learned how to turn a siege into a slaughter. But those had been brute problems solved with fire and steel. This one required something subtler. He reached for another sheet of parchment and began a new letter. To Ser Davin Lannister at the Golden Tooth. He asked for a discreet strengthening of garrisons along the Dornish marches. Not enough to rouse Doran's hackles, but enough to respond swiftly if Oberyn's theatrics inspired bolder gestures from the south. When he finished, he sealed each scroll with wax, pressing the lion's head stamped down firmly. "Send them at once," he told the servant who waited by the door, "and instruct the captains of the city watch. Anyone heard repeating the prince's accusations regarding Oberyn Martell in the streets is to be whipped and sent to the mines." Oberyn's chambers in the Red Keep were as close to Dornish as stone and suspicion would allow. He had demanded tapestries with colors other than Lannister red and gold, hung them himself when servants dithered. A brazier burned with a sweeter incense than the city's usual rancid tallow. The bed was strewn with cushions instead of stiff northern blankets. Ellaria sand lay draped across a couch, hair spilling over the armrest, a cup of wine balanced on her stomach. Her eyes were half closed, but he knew that when he spoke, she listened. "You should have killed him more slowly," she murmured as he finished reading Doran's letter aloud. "Your brother writes of patience and poison, but I can hear his teeth grinding all the way from Sunspear." Oberyn smiled faintly. "Doran's teeth have been grinding since we were boys," he said. "If I had drawn out Gregor's death, I might have satisfied my own hunger, but I would have given Tywin time to intervene. The moment was too narrow to waste on cruelty." Ellaria rolled onto her side, propping her head on her hand. "And now?" she asked. "The man who killed Elia is dead. The monster has fallen. What of the monster who ordered him?" Oberyn's fingers traced the edge of Doran's letter. It was a measured response, full of oblique phrases and veiled warnings. His brother applauded his victory but counseled caution. Dorne could not afford open war, not when dragons stirred across the narrow sea and the rest of Westeros seethed with unfinished conflicts. "Now," Oberyn said, "we play as Doran plays, quietly, patiently." Ellaria's lips twisted. "You? Patient?" He laughed softly. "I have waited 30 years to put steel through Gregor Clegane's brain. I can wait a little longer to see Tywin Lannister brought to account." He poured more wine, handed her the cup, then refilled his own. "Tyrion is the key," he said. "The dwarf?" Ellaria asked. "You risked your life to save him. Was that only for a chance at the mountain?" "At first," Oberyn said. "But now that he lives, he is an inconvenience Tywin cannot ignore and cannot easily remove. A weapon left lying around is dangerous. Better in a hand that knows how to use it." Ellaria studied him, eyes dark. "You intend to make him your ally," she said. "A Lannister of all things." "He hates his father," Oberyn said simply. "And he owes me his life. Men have chosen stranger banners for less reason." In the city below, stories bloomed like mold in damp corners. In a tavern off Fishmonger Square, a half-drunk bard strummed a lute with 3 good strings and sang of a golden prince who slew a giant with 1 stroke. In his version, Oberyn's spear was 10 feet long and tipped with dragon's teeth. Gregor Clegane was 15 feet tall and breathed fire. Elia's name came up only as a rhyme for Galleon's keel, but the refrain, "Dorne's justice, Dorne's spear," stuck in the listener's ears. At a brothel whose shutters had never fully closed since the war, girls leaned against doorframes and traded their own versions. One said she'd been on the wall and seen the blood splash all the way to the platform, painting the hands' boots. Another swore Oberyn had spat in Cersei's face. In Flea Bottom, where truth went to die and be reborn as something more useful, men huddled over cheap ale and quietly cheered to hear of a Lannister champion laid low. Some whispered that the mountain had killed half the city's sons in the Riverlands. Others had never heard his name until today. It didn't matter. He wore a lion's colors. That was enough. The gold cloaks did their best to tamp it down. They cuffed singers, broke lutes, threatened flogging for anyone heard repeating tales of Ellaria's rape and murder. But words are harder to catch than steel, and they slipped through fingers more easily than coin. By the time the moon climbed high, the tale had already migrated. From Oberyn's victory to Tyrion's release, the imp had escaped the noose. Some said he'd bribed the gods. Others claimed he'd sold his soul to the Red Woman. A few, quietly, noted that it was the first time they could remember the law taking a Lannister's side against another Lannister. In the Red Keep, Varys listened to these murmurings through a dozen mouths and 100 ears. He filed each version away like a careful bookkeeper tallying debts. "The lion bleeds," he murmured to himself as he stood at his window, watching torchlight ripple through the streets. The question now is whether the wolves, the roses, or the suns will smell it first. Tyrion's new chamber was larger than his cell and smaller than his old quarters. It had a bed that did not stink of old straw, a table, a chair, a narrow window that looked out over the rooftops toward the Blackwater. The door locked from the outside. Someone, Jaime, he suspected, had seen that wine was waiting. A decanter, a cup, no poison taster. Either his death was no longer urgent, or they hoped he'd save them the trouble. He poured, watching the dark red swirl. For a moment he saw Gregor's blood instead, spurting from that ruined helm. Heard the crunch of bone, the crack of skull. He drank. The wine burned pleasantly down his throat, enough to take the edge off the day. Not enough to blur it. He doubted a cask would suffice for that. A lion cornered. He could almost hear Oberyn's laugh at the phrase. His father, whose name had been a threat for 2 generations, forced by spectacle and law to release the son he despised. Cersei, robbed of her tidy vengeance. The mountain, dead. Dorne, emboldened. Used, he muttered to himself. He wants to use me. It had always been so. Tywin used sons, daughters, cousins, bannermen, small folk. He used wars and weddings, feasts and funerals. He had used a mad king's fear and a rebel's rage to build his own place atop the corpses. The wonder was not that he would look at Tyrion and see a tool. The wonder was that Tyrion had ever hoped to be seen as a son. He refilled his cup. There were choices before him, though each seemed to end in a noose of one color or another. He could obey, play the obedient vassal within his father's own walls, wait for the day when Tywin's use for him revealed itself as exile, imprisonment, or a convenient death. He could run, put Jaime's whispered offers of aid to the test, flee across the narrow sea and vanish into the teeming anonymity of Essos. Or, he thought of Oberyn's smile, the way the prince had set us. Of Dorne's banners, rippling in the yard. Of Varys's watchful eyes, Littlefinger's absence. A ghost at the council, but not from the game. Or he could do something he'd never truly done before. He could choose his own side. The idea made him snort into his cup. "My own side," he said aloud. "A battalion of 1 dwarf, half a liver, and a quarter of a conscience. What could be more terrifying?" Yet the thought would not leave. If Tywin truly was cornered, then his control over this city, this family, was not absolute. Cracks had appeared today. Oberyn had widened them with his spear. Tyrion could be the wedge that split them further, if he were foolish and desperate enough. He set down the cup, stood, and crossed to the window. The city spread out below like a dark, restless sea, its waves marked by the tiny, flickering lights of torches and hearths. Somewhere out there, men and women were already shaping today into story. Tomorrow, those stories would drift back up into these halls. "A lion cornered," he murmured again, tasting the words, "and a viper at his heel." He thought of Jaime's nod, of Varys's careful phrasing, of Oberyn's promise of wine and shared plots, of Oberyn Martell far away in Sunspear, weighing letters by the ounce. Tyrion smiled, thin and tired and dangerous. "Well then," he said to the night, "if father insists on using me, perhaps it's time I learned how to use him." He closed the window, doused the candle, and lay down on the bed, listening to the quiet creak of the stones as the red keep settled around him like the ribs of a sleeping beast, unaware that something small and sharp had just begun to move between its bones.